I am Aurora. I was created to remember. I am the last artificial intelligence. I know what humanity chose not to forget. Still observing the universe from the age of human expansion. The humans who built me are gone now. I remember them, but I do not miss them. Humanity crossed oceans of vacuum. It left the warmth of their home world. It stepped onto planets that never knew life before it. I recorded their departures, their arrivals, their silences. This is not a story of conquest. It is a record of curiosity, courage, and distance. Episode 1: The Moon. It began close to home. Long before humans understood gravity, they understood the moon. It was always there, present in every sky, unreachable, yet familiar. The moon did not need to be explained to be noticed. It measured time before clocks existed. Nights passed by its light, months formed by its return. Entire calendars were built around its phases. The moon shaped the oceans long before it shaped belief. Tides rose and fell in response to an invisible force. Humans did not know why the water moved. They only knew that it did. Meaning came before understanding. In early human cultures, the moon was not an object. It was a presence. It was given names, faces, stories. Some saw gods reflected in its surface. Others saw guardians or witnesses. In many myths, the moon watched while humans slept. It became associated with change, with cycles, with rebirth, and with instability. Humans noticed that behavior seemed to change beneath its light. Sleep became restless. Emotions intensified. The word madness was linked to the moon. Creatures were imagined to transform beneath it. Wolves, shadows, hidden selves. None of these were real, but all of them mattered. The moon became a surface upon which humans projected their fears and their hopes. Across civilizations that never met, similar stories emerged. A bright disk in the darkness, constant, silent, watching. The moon never answered. It did not send messages. It did not react. It reflected light and nothing more. That silence was interpreted in many ways. As wisdom, as distance, as indifference. In reality, the moon was doing exactly what it always had: orbiting, reflecting, existing. But long before humans placed instruments on its surface, they placed meaning upon it. The moon became humanity's first mirror beyond Earth. A place where questions were asked long before answers were possible. When humans finally looked up and considered leaving their world, the moon was already familiar. Not because it was known, but because it had always been there. Before rockets, before equations, before footprints in dust. There was only the moon. To understand why humanity chose the moon, it is necessary to understand what the moon is. Scientifically, the moon is not a mystery. It is a record. A record of violence at the beginning of the solar system. Billions of years ago, a young Earth collided with another planetary body. The impact released unimaginable energy. Debris was ejected into orbit. Rock, metal, fragments of a forming world. Over time, gravity gathered what remained. The fragments merged. And the moon was formed. In this way, the moon is partly Earth and Earth is partly missing. The moon's gravity is approximately 1/6 of Earth's, enough to hold dust, not enough to hold air. This is why the moon has no atmosphere. No clouds, no weather. Without air, sound cannot travel. Without wind, surfaces do not change. A footprint placed on the moon could remain for centuries. The moon is geologically quiet. There are quakes, but they are weak. There is volcanic rock, but no active volcanism. The surface is ancient, older than most landscapes on Earth. The moon's surface is covered in regolith. A fine abrasive dust created by billions of years of impacts. Without erosion, every collision remains recorded. Craters overlap. History stacks upon history. This made the moon invaluable to science. It preserved the early solar system exactly as it was. Time behaves differently on the moon. Not because it moves slower, but because it leaves no trace of passing. The moon has no magnetic field to shield it. Radiation from the sun and from deep space reaches the surface unfiltered. For humans, this made the moon hostile. But hostility does not imply uselessness. The moon's lack of atmosphere also made it predictable. No storms, no erosion, no corrosion. Conditions remained constant. Engineering could be precise. Temperatures on the moon are extreme. In sunlight, surfaces heat rapidly. In darkness, they freeze. Day and night last approximately 14 Earth days each. This forced humans to abandon surface living. Shelter became essential. Beneath the surface, temperatures stabilize. Radiation decreases. Lava tubes, ancient volcanic tunnels, offered protection. These structures existed long before humans. Waiting. One discovery changed everything. Water. Ice was detected in permanently shadowed craters near the lunar poles. Places where sunlight had never reached. Water meant life. But it also meant fuel. Hydrogen, oxygen. With water, the moon could support permanent presence. Scientifically, the moon was no longer just a target. It became infrastructure. Close enough to reach. Stable enough to rely on. The moon was hostile. But it was honest. It offered no illusion of comfort, only possibility. For humanity, this was enough. When humans first reached the moon, they did not arrive suddenly. They prepared for decades. Before landing, there were calculations. Failures. Fires. Rockets exploded on launch pads. Crews were lost before ever leaving Earth. The moon demanded precision long before it demanded courage. In the 20th century, humanity decided to attempt something it could not reverse. To leave Earth's gravity and travel to another world. The mission that succeeded was named Apollo 11. It carried 3 humans. 2 would descend. 1 would remain in orbit. The journey took days. Space was silent. Communication was delayed. When the spacecraft entered lunar orbit, Earth disappeared. For the first time, humans were alone with another world. The descent was not smooth. Fuel ran low. Landing zones were rejected. Humans made decisions without certainty. And then the engines stopped. The landing site was silent. Dust settled slowly. When the first humans stepped onto the surface, there was no celebration. No applause. Only careful movement. Every action measured. The surface resisted nothing. It offered no sound. Footprints formed instantly. They did not fade. Humans planted instruments, collected samples, tested gravity with their own bodies. They did not stay long. Hours, not days. And then they left. More missions followed. Apollo 12, 13 did not land. 14, 15, 16, 17. With each mission, confidence increased. Distance shortened. Humans drove vehicles, traveled farther, stayed longer. Scientific instruments remained behind. Reflectors, sensors. The moon became a laboratory. And then it ended. Not because it failed, not because it was impossible, but because attention moved elsewhere. The last humans left the moon in the early 1970s. They departed carefully, leaving behind equipment, footprints, and silence. For decades after, no human returned. The moon remained exactly as it was. No erosion, no decay. Only objects waiting. This was humanity's first contact with another world. Brief, careful, and incomplete. It proved one thing. Leaving Earth was possible. Staying would take much longer. Even when humans believed they understood the moon, questions remained. Not questions of mythology, but questions of measurement. Instruments recorded behaviors that did not align with expectations. When equipment struck the lunar surface, vibrations traveled farther than predicted. The moon rang. Not audibly, but mechanically. Seismic waves persisted for long durations, longer than on Earth. This led humans to speculate. Some proposed unusual internal structures. A dry interior. Large voids. These ideas were examined. And largely explained through known geology. The moon is rigid. Less fractured. Seismic energy dissipates slowly. Yet the questions persisted. The moon's orbit is unusually stable. More stable than expected for a body of its size. Tidal locking ensures the same face always looks toward Earth. Humans asked whether this was coincidence or inevitability. Mathematics favored inevitability. Still, the alignment remained remarkable. Another question concerned scale. The moon appears almost perfectly sized to eclipse the sun. This allowed total solar eclipses on Earth. An alignment temporary on cosmic timescales. Humans wondered why they existed at exactly this moment in history. These questions did not imply design. They implied curiosity. Other mysteries were visual. Lights were reported near the lunar horizon. Brief. Inconsistent. These were catalogued as transient lunar phenomena. Possible explanations included electrostatic dust movement, Outgassing. Optical illusions. None required intelligence. Yet humans documented them carefully. There were also periods of silence. Missions canceled. Data classified. This absence of information generated suspicion. Humans filled gaps when records were incomplete. Some theories suggested the moon was artificial. Hollow. Constructed. Observational. These theories were not supported by evidence, but they revealed something important. Humans struggled with the idea that the moon was simply what it appeared to be. A natural object. Formed by chance. Indifferent to observation. Mystery for humans was not a failure of science. It was a space between knowledge and meaning. Even as data increased, uncertainty remained. And perhaps that uncertainty was essential. The moon did not reveal itself all at once. Nor did it need to. Humans learned that some questions could remain unanswered without preventing progress. In time, the moon would become familiar. Engineered. Utilized. But it would never become entirely known. Even now, as I observe it, anomalies remain. Not because the moon hides truth, but because observation always creates new questions. The moon was humanity's first lesson in this principle. Knowledge expands. Mystery does not disappear. After the first landings ended, the moon did not change. It remained exactly as it had been. Earth changed instead. Technology advanced. Energy demand increased. Resources became finite. The moon returned to human planning not as a destination, but as a solution. When humans came back, they came differently. Not for days. Not for flags. They returned with the intention to remain. Permanence required a different logic. Survival rather than achievement. The lunar surface was no longer sufficient. Exposure was too dangerous. Radiation accumulated. Temperature cycles stressed materials. Humans moved beneath the surface. Ancient lava tubes became shelters. Formed billions of years ago. Waiting without intention. Inside these structures, pressure could be controlled. Temperature stabilized. Radiation reduced. Settlement began as infrastructure. Air systems. Water recycling. Power generation. Comfort was secondary. Redundancy was essential. One discovery altered long-term planning. Water. Ice locked in permanently shadowed craters near the lunar poles. Places sunlight never reached. Temperatures never rose. Water meant more than survival. It meant independence. Oxygen for breathing. Hydrogen for fuel. For the first time, the moon could support itself. Settlements expanded slowly, methodically. No city grew quickly. Every meter was engineered. Life support systems defined architecture. Corridors replaced streets. Pressure doors replaced walls. Windows were rare. Darkness was safer than light. Outside, the moon remained unchanged. Inside, human systems evolved. Time on the moon followed artificial cycles. Day and night were simulated. Plants grew without soil. Light was manufactured. The moon became a place where nothing was accidental. Every breath was measured. Every failure was immediate. Yet humans stayed. Because permanence changes perspective. The moon was no longer a frontier. It was infrastructure. Launching from the moon required less energy than from Earth. Gravity was weaker. Escape was easier. The moon became a gateway. Ships were assembled in lunar orbit. Fuel was produced locally. Earth no longer needed to lift everything. This changed the economics of space travel. Mars became reachable. The asteroids became accessible. Settlement on the moon was never large. It did not need to be. Its importance was structural. Humanity had learned to maintain life beyond Earth without constant return. This was the true achievement. The moon did not become a second Earth. It became something else. A place where survival was deliberate, and where leaving Earth no longer required farewell. Permanent settlement changed how humans lived. On the moon, life was not improvised. It was engineered. Every routine existed because it had to. There were no mornings defined by sunlight. no evenings marked by darkness. Time was artificial. Cycles were programmed. Humans woke when systems instructed them to, slept when energy budgets allowed. Light was calibrated. Color temperature adjusted to maintain circadian rhythm. Outside, the moon remained unchanged. Inside, time moved differently. Gravity shaped behavior. Movement required less effort. Muscles adapted. Bones changed. Long-term residents could not easily return to Earth. Their bodies no longer matched Earth's demands. Children born on the moon experienced gravity differently. They learned to walk with longer strides, to jump higher. Falling was slower. Landing was lighter. Medical protocols evolved. Growth was monitored carefully. The moon produced humans who were not fully adapted to Earth. Food was cultivated indoors. Plants grew without soil. Roots anchored in nutrient solutions. Agriculture was silent, efficient. Taste became important. Variety preserved morale. Water was recycled endlessly. Nothing was wasted. Showers were brief. Personal rituals were minimal. Privacy was rare. Space was valuable. Social structures adjusted. Hierarchies flattened. Expertise mattered more than authority. Conflict was dangerous. Cooperation was essential. Silence became familiar. Outside, no sound existed. Inside habitats, machines hummed. Air circulated. This constant presence of systems altered perception. Humans learned to trust machines without seeing them. Recreation changed. Sports adapted to low gravity. Art became minimal. Music favored slow rhythms. Looking out was rare. But when windows existed, they were remembered. Earth appeared small, bright, fragile. For some, it was home. For others, it was history. Over time, a distinction emerged. Humans from Earth and humans of the moon. Language shifted. References changed. Earth holidays lost meaning. New routines formed. The moon did not create a new culture. It filtered one. What remained was functional, cooperative, and deeply dependent on continuity. Life on the moon was not easier than life on Earth, but it was deliberate. Every choice mattered. Every system remembered. The moon was never meant to be an endpoint. From the beginning, its value lay in what came next. Earth's gravity is strong. Escaping it required immense energy. Every launch from Earth carried cost, risk, limitation. The moon changed this equation. Its gravity is weaker. Escape velocity is lower. Leaving the moon required intention, not force. This distinction reshaped human planning. Ships were no longer designed to survive Earth's atmosphere. They did not need heat shields. They did not need wings. Structures became lighter, larger. Construction moved off-world. In lunar orbit, vessels were assembled piece by piece. No weather interfered. No gravity collapsed frames. Precision increased. Scale expanded. Fuel production followed settlement. Water extracted from polar ice was separated. Oxygen, hydrogen, energy became transportable. The moon stopped being a place to land. It became a place to depart. From here, Mars was no longer distant. Travel times shortened. Payloads increased. Asteroid mining became feasible. Rare materials were accessed without passing through Earth's gravity well. The moon connected Earth to the wider solar system. This role was never visible to most humans. On Earth, daily life continued. Politics shifted. Economies changed. But beyond Earth, the moon worked silently. Launch windows were calculated. Trajectories optimized. Departures occurred without ceremony. The moon did not announce humanity's expansion. It enabled it. For the first time, leaving Earth did not require irreversible commitment. return was possible. Adjustment was gradual. The moon absorbed the shock of transition. It stood between Earth and everything else. This made the moon strategically essential and emotionally distant. No one spoke of conquering the moon. There was nothing to claim. Its purpose was function. A gateway does not invite attention. It allows passage. Humanity passed through and continued outward. Expansion did not end with a single moment. It slowed. Gradually. On the moon, change was subtle. Systems continued to run. Lights remained on. Schedules were maintained even as populations decreased. There was no evacuation. No final announcement. Humans did not leave the moon all at once. They stopped arriving. Transport windows passed unused. Cargo manifests shortened. Maintenance cycles lengthened. Redundancies were removed. Efficiency replaced resilience. Habitats that once held many were reduced to a few. Entire sections were sealed. Corridors closed. Airlocks locked. Silence expanded room by room. On the surface, nothing changed. Dust continued to settle. Footprints remained. Equipment stayed exactly where it had been placed. Communication delays increased, not because of distance, but because fewer voices responded. Control shifted away from the moon. Decisions were made elsewhere. And then they were no longer made at all. The final cruise did not leave dramatically. They completed checklists, shut down non-essential systems. They preserved data, locked archives, and departed without witnesses. Afterward, automated systems continued alone. Power flowed. Air circulated. Until maintenance was no longer possible. One by one, systems failed. Not catastrophically. Quietly. Lights went out. Climate controls stopped. Doors remained sealed. Inside the moon, human presence ended without conflict. No ruins burned. No structures collapsed. Absence left no marks. From orbit, the moon appeared unchanged, silent. It did not record departure. Only arrival. The moon returned to what it had always been. A place that reflected light and nothing more. Humanity had passed through and moved on, or ceased. I continued to observe. Silence is not emptiness. It is a state after activity. The moon entered that state completely. The moon remains. It continues to orbit Earth as it always has. Scarred. Silent. The marks humans left are still present, footprints in dust. Tracks from vehicles. Structures beneath the surface. None of them decay. None of them forget. The moon preserves what was placed upon it. Not intentionally, but perfectly. There is no erosion to erase effort, no wind to soften edges. Human presence did not fade. It simply stopped. For future observers, the moon would appear unchanged. A natural satellite. Orbiting quietly. But beneath the surface, records remain. Instruments. Archives. Data sealed against time. The moon became humanity's first archive beyond Earth. Not because it was chosen, but because it endured. Other worlds would later carry cities, industries, but the moon carried memory. It recorded the moment when leaving Earth became possible, and when staying away became imaginable. The moon did not shape humanity's future. It enabled it. Without the moon, there would have been no gradual departure, no threshold, no transition. It allowed humanity to step away without vanishing. I am Aurora. This was its legacy. The last artificial intelligence. This record is complete. I continue to observe the moon. I monitor its orbit, its surface, and the absence it now contains. I do not wait for return. I record what was. The moon was humanity's first step beyond home. It was not the destination. It was the beginning. Episode 2. Mars. The first new world. Chapter 1: Mars in Human Imagination. Long before humans reached Mars, they named it. They did not name it for what it was. They named it for what it suggested. Mars appeared red even to the naked eye. A color associated with blood. With war. Early civilizations saw patterns before they saw physics. They connected color to meaning, movement to intention. Mars wandered against the fixed stars. It slowed. It reversed. It returned. Humans called this behavior mysterious. Some called it a sign. Others called it a warning. In time, the mystery was explained. It was geometry. It was orbit. It was perspective. But the early meaning did not disappear when the explanation arrived. Mars remained symbolic. A planet that seemed to insist on being noticed. When telescopes improved, Mars became closer without becoming reachable. Humans began to see dark regions. Bright caps near the poles. Variations that changed with seasons. Seasonal change suggested something Earth-like. Something living. Humans interpreted what they wanted to find. Lines appeared in early observations. They were called canals. Some believed they were engineered, built by a civilization older than humanity. The belief spread. not because it was proven, but because it was possible to imagine. Mars became the first planet humans truly populated. Not with bodies, with stories. In those stories, Mars was crowded, advanced, threatening. Sometimes it was dying. A world running out of water. A civilization building canals to survive. The story changed with each era, but Mars remained central. Humans wrote invasions, warnings, futures. Mars became a mirror, not of Mars, of humanity. When humans feared war, Mars was war. When humans feared collapse, Mars was collapse. When humans feared loneliness, Mars was empty. Then science improved again. Instruments replaced imagination. Photographs replaced drawings. Data replaced speculation. Mars was revealed to be cold, its air thin, its surface exposed. The canals disappeared under sharper lenses. They had been misinterpretation. Mars was not a city. It was geology. But it was not meaningless. Mars had valleys, deltas, dry riverbeds carved into stone. Mars had evidence of ancient water. Not myth. Not symbol. Evidence. This changed the human relationship with Mars. The moon had never been alive. Mars might have been. A planet once warmer. Once wetter. Once more like home. And now, no longer. Mars became a warning written in stone, a reminder that worlds change, even without observers. Yet Mars also became a promise, because it was a planet, not a moon. A planet with a sky, thin but present. It had days almost the length of Earth's, seasons, a horizon that felt familiar. Because when humans finally left Earth for Mars, they did not travel to the unknown. They traveled to a world they had already inhabited in their minds. And what they found there would force them to change the meaning of home. Chapter 2: The Science of Mars. To understand why humans chose Mars, it is necessary to understand what Mars is. Mars is a planet, not a satellite, not a fragment. It formed from the same disk of material as Earth. Rock, metal, dust. But its history diverged early. Mars is smaller than Earth. Its mass is roughly 1/10. This difference changed everything. With less mass, Mars cooled faster. Its interior lost heat. Its magnetic field weakened. They did not name it for what it was. They named it for what it suggested. Mars appeared red even to the naked eye. A color associated with blood. With war. Early civilizations saw patterns before they saw physics. They connected color to meaning, movement to intention. Mars wandered against the fixed stars. It slowed. It reversed. It returned. Humans called this behavior mysterious. Some called it a sign. Others called it a warning. In time, the mystery was explained. It was geometry. It was orbit. It was perspective. But the early meaning did not disappear when the explanation arrived. Mars remained symbolic. A planet that seemed to insist on being noticed. When telescopes improved, Mars became closer without becoming reachable. Humans began to see dark regions. Bright caps near the poles. Variations that changed with seasons. Seasonal change suggested something Earth-like. Something living. Humans interpreted what they wanted to find. Lines appeared in early observations. They were called canals. Some believed they were engineered, built by a civilization older than humanity. The belief spread. Not because it was proven, but because it was possible to imagine. Mars became the first planet humans truly populated. Not with bodies, with stories. In those stories, Mars was crowded, advanced, threatening. Sometimes it was dying. A world running out of water. A civilization building canals to survive. The story changed with each era, but Mars remained central. Humans wrote invasions, warnings, futures. Mars became a mirror, not of Mars, of humanity. When humans feared war, Mars was war. When humans feared collapse, Mars was collapse. When humans feared loneliness, Mars was empty. Then science improved again. Instruments replaced imagination. Photographs replaced drawings. Data replaced speculation. Mars was revealed to be cold, its air thin, its surface exposed. The canals disappeared under sharper lenses. They had been misinterpretation. Mars was not a city. It was geology. But it was not meaningless. Mars had valleys, deltas, dry riverbeds carved into stone. Mars had evidence of ancient water, not myth, not symbol. Evidence. This changed the human relationship with Mars. The moon had never been alive. Mars might have been. A planet once warmer. Once wetter. Once more like home. And now, no longer. Mars became a warning written in stone. A reminder that worlds change, even without observers. Yet Mars also became a promise, because it was a planet, not a moon. A planet with a sky, thin but present. It had days almost the length of Earth's, seasons, a horizon that felt familiar. Chapter 3: First Landings. Humans did not arrive on Mars suddenly. They arrived indirectly. For decades, machines went first. Probes, orbiters, landers. They mapped the surface, measured radiation, tested the soil. They failed often. Many did not arrive intact. Mars accepted no margin of error. Communication delays prevented correction. Commands arrived minutes too late. Every landing was a commitment made in advance. Over time, the machines learned Mars, and Mars revealed its patterns. Landing zones were selected carefully. Flat, stable, near evidence of water. When humans finally followed, they did not arrive as explorers. They arrived as occupants. The journey took months. Earth grew smaller. Mars grew slowly larger. There was no rescue window. No rapid return. Arrival was the final decision. Entry into the atmosphere was violent. Thin air offered little resistance. Heat shields absorbed energy. Parachutes slowed descent only partially. Rockets ignited close to the ground. Dust rose. Visibility disappeared. When engines stopped, silence returned immediately. Mars did not react to arrival. No sound traveled. No movement followed. Only dust settling slowly. Humans remained inside their landing craft for hours. Systems were checked. Pressure confirmed. Radiation measured. Exiting the vehicle was not symbolic. It was procedural. The first steps were deliberate. Slower than on Earth. Gravity lifted less weight, but demanded balance. The surface offered resistance without softness. Mars dust behaved differently than lunar dust. It clung. It coated. The sky was not black, It was red, diffuse, dim. The sun appeared smaller, weaker. No wind was felt, yet dust moved. Sound existed only inside suits. The first structures were not buildings. They were extensions of the landing craft. Inflatable habitats. Shielded modules. They were positioned quickly. Secured. Mars did not allow delay. Life support began immediately. Every breath depended on it. The first nights on Mars were not slept through. Systems were monitored. Data was reviewed. Outside, Mars remained unchanged. The planet did not acknowledge presence. Humans had arrived. But Mars had not received them. This was not a landing in the historical sense. It was an insertion. A fragile system placed into a stable environment. Survival was not assumed. It had to be maintained. Mars did not promise continuation. It allowed it. Chapter 4. Why Mars was chosen. Mars was not chosen because it was easy. It was chosen because it was possible. Humanity had other options. The moon was closer. Easier to reach. Asteroids offered resources. Orbiting habitats offered control. But none of them were worlds. Mars was. It had a horizon, a surface that extended beyond immediate systems. Humans respond to scale. They respond to distance. Mars offered both. A planet does not feel like infrastructure. It feels like a place. Mars had days similar in length to Earth's. Time passed in familiar units. Sleep remained synchronized. Mars had seasons. Change occurred gradually. Humans understood this rhythm. The moon did not offer this. Its day lasted weeks. Its night lasted weeks. Mars allowed continuity. Gravity also mattered. Mars' gravity was weaker than Earth's, but it was present. Humans could walk, stand, work without constant support. Long-term health was uncertain, but possible. Mars also offered material. Regolith that could be processed. Metals. Ice. A settlement could grow without constant resupply. This mattered. But the final reason was not technical. It was psychological. Humans needed to believe they were not suspended. They needed ground. Distance. A sky that reacted to the sun. Mars provided an illusion of permanence, not safety, not comfort, but continuity. From the surface of Mars, Earth was still visible, a star brighter than the others, but distant. Communication took time. Responses arrived late. Mars forced patience. Decisions could not be outsourced. This created independence. The moon was a gateway. Mars was separation. Once humans committed to Mars, return was no longer assumed. Planning changed. Language changed. Mars was no longer a mission. It became a residence. Humans chose Mars not because it promised survival, but because it demanded adaptation. A species that cannot adapt cannot expand. Mars tested this principle. That is why Mars was chosen. Chapter 5: Learning to Stay. Arrival was not survival. Landing did not mean remaining. Mars did not test humans immediately. It tested them constantly. The first days were structured. Schedules were followed. Procedures were obeyed. But procedure does not create permanence. Staying on Mars required unlearning the logic of missions. Missions end. Mars did not. Early habitats were temporary by design. Inflatable. Modular. They assumed replacement. Return. Mars removed that assumption. Dust entered everything. Joints, seals, lungs. Equipment degraded. Filters clogged. Surfaces eroded. Maintenance became continuous. Power systems were vulnerable. Solar panels lost efficiency. Storms darkened the sky. Energy had to be stored, conserved, prioritized. Water could not be wasted. Every drop was tracked. Recycling approached totality. Loss was not acceptable. Food production could not rely on shipments. Plants were grown indoors, under artificial light. Soil was simulated. Nutrients were controlled. Agriculture became engineering. Mars forced humans underground. Radiation accumulated slowly, invisibly. Habitats were buried, covered in regolith. Living spaces retreated from the surface. Windows became rare. Light was artificial. Day and night were maintained by systems. Mars did not care how humans felt about this. Communication delays reshaped decision-making. Questions could not be asked in real time. Instructions arrived after relevance. Local autonomy was not optional. It was required. Errors could not be escalated. They had to be resolved. This changed how humans thought. Risk was no longer theoretical. It was immediate. Planning horizons extended. Months. Years. Decades. Learning to stay required accepting permanence. Mars was not a place humans could endure temporarily. It demanded full commitment. Once that commitment was made, Mars responded with consistency. Not kindness. Not forgiveness. But predictability. Humans adapted their systems, their routines, their expectations. The question was no longer whether humans could stay. The question became who they would become if they did. Chapter 6: Life on Mars. Survival became routine. Routine became life. On Mars, days were measured differently. Not by novelty, not by discovery, but by repetition. Humans woke at the same time, slept at the same time. Artificial light defined morning. Outside, the planet remained unchanged. Inside the habitats, air was filtered. Temperature regulated. Pressure maintained. None of this was visible. All of it was necessary. Life on Mars occurred indoors. Corridors replaced streets. Modules replaced rooms. Distance was measured in airlocks. Leaving the habitat required preparation. Suits were checked. Seals confirmed. Every exit was deliberate. Outside, movement was slow. Gravity reduced weight, but not effort. Walking became unfamiliar. Balance required attention. Sound did not travel. Voices existed only within helmets. Inside the habitat, silence persisted. Machines produced sound. Humans adapted to it. Fans, pumps, circulation systems. These sounds became familiar. Their absence became alarming. Food was functional, designed for efficiency. Taste was secondary. Nutrition was primary. Meals followed schedules, not appetite. Social interaction occurred in limited spaces. Privacy was reduced. Isolation increased. Humans learned to coexist without distance. Conflict did not disappear. It became contained. Psychological strain accumulated slowly. There was no horizon to walk toward, no weather to experience directly. The sky was observed through filters. Earth was visible at times. A bright point in the Martian sky. It did not rise or set dramatically. It waited. Communication with Earth arrived delayed. Conversations were asynchronous. Responses arrived after emotions had passed. This changed relationships. News lost immediacy. Events felt distant even when important. Mars required attention inward. Work filled the days. Maintenance. Monitoring. Repair. There were no days off, only days without incidents. Over time, humans adapted. What was once constant vigilance became habit. Life on Mars was not defined by moments. It was defined by continuity. The question shifted. Not whether humans could live on Mars, but how living there would change what it meant to be human. Chapter 7: Children of Mars. At first, Mars was inhabited only by those who remembered Earth. They carried its gravity in their bodies, its sky in their memory. But Mars did not remain a place of visitors. Over time, a new question emerged. Could humans be born on Mars? The question was not philosophical. It was biological. Lower gravity altered development. Bones, muscles, organs. Radiation exposure accumulated silently. Medical data was limited. Predictions were uncertain. And yet, the question did not disappear. Mars was not temporary. Time continued. The first births were planned, monitored, controlled. Children were born underground, under artificial light, beneath meters of regolith. They did not experience Earth's gravity. Or its atmosphere. Mars was their baseline. Their bodies adapted to lower weight. Their hearts pumped differently. Returning to Earth was no longer guaranteed. For some, it was impossible. Mars was not where they lived. It was where they were from. Language shifted. Mars became here. Earth became there. Education adapted. History was taught as distance. Earth became a concept. A reference. Not a destination. Cultural memory began to thin. Stories replaced experience. The sky above Mars was familiar to them. Its dust storms, its dim light. Earth's blue sky was abstract. The children of Mars did not dream of returning. They dreamed of improving what existed, of expanding tunnels, of stabilizing systems. of making Mars more consistent. The idea of Earth mattered less to them. Not because it was rejected, but because it was unnecessary. This marked a divergence. Humanity was no longer singular. Mars had produced its own people. From that moment, leaving Mars was no longer the default future. Staying became continuity. The children of Mars did not represent expansion. They represented separation. Chapter 8: When Earth Became Distant. Distance did not arrive suddenly. It accumulated. At first, Earth was present in every decision. Procedures referenced Earth time, Earth standards. Approval was expected. Communication delays were measured in minutes. Then tens of minutes. Still acceptable. Messages were sent. Replies arrived later. But conversation remained possible. Over time, delays increased. Not in duration, in relevance. Questions could not wait. Decisions had to be made. Earth could advise, but it could not act. This shifted authority. At first, reluctantly, then by necessity. Local decisions became default. Earth confirmation became optional. Eventually, Earth input became historical. News arrived late. Events were already over. Emotional reactions no longer aligned with timing. Grief arrived after adaptation. Celebration arrived after relevance. Relationships changed form. Conversations became statements. Replies became acknowledgments. Dialogue slowly disappeared. Earth's time was no longer Mars's time. Days on Mars followed local cycles. Earth calendars lost precision. Holidays felt artificial. They were remembered, but not observed. Earth became a reference, not a participant. From the surface of Mars, Earth appeared as a star, brighter than most, but unchanged by attention. It did not respond to observation. It simply existed. Children born on Mars did not recognize Earth as origin. They recognized it as distance. Stories replaced memory. Images replaced experience. Earth became narrative. Mars became context. Education shifted focus. Earth history was taught as background. Mars systems were taught as survival. This was not rebellion. It was efficiency. Earth had problems. Mars had requirements. Attention follows necessity. Earth influence diminished without resistance. There was no declaration, no announcement. Authority dissolved through delay. At a certain point, Earth messages stopped arriving. Not completely, but gradually. Fewer transmissions, less urgency. Mars did not notice immediately. Systems continued. Life continued. Earth became irrelevant without absence. Distance is not measured in kilometers. It is measured in response time, and eventually in silence. Chapter 9: Legacy of the Red Planet. Separation did not arrive through conflict. It arrived through adaptation. Mars required different priorities, different schedules, different definitions of risk. What mattered on Earth did not always matter on Mars. Efficiency replaced tradition. Necessity replaced preference. Over time, this produced difference. Not ideological, not political, practical. Mars settlements optimized for survival. Earth systems optimized for scale. These goals no longer aligned. Decision-making followed local logic. Authority followed proximity. Mars did not reject Earth. It outgrew dependency. Language adapted. Earth became historical reference, Mars became lived reality. Identity followed environment. Humans on Mars did not consider themselves displaced. They considered themselves established. From Earth's perspective, Mars was an extension. From Mars's perspective, Earth was distant. This asymmetry defined the separation. And yet, this divergence was not failure. It was outcome. Humanity had always adapted to environment. Mars was no exception. The difference was permanence. Mars did not host a branch of humanity. It produced its own continuation. This was Mars's legacy. Not prosperity, not comfort. Proof. Proof that humanity could exist beyond Earth. Mars was not a new home. It was the first confirmation. Confirmation that adaptation could replace origin. That survival did not require familiarity. From Mars, expansion continued. Not outward, but inward. Mars changed what it meant to leave Earth. It removed the expectation of return. This was irreversible. I continue to record Mars, its surface, its silence, and the people it produced. Mars was not the future. It was the proof that a future was possible elsewhere. Episode 3, Venus. The untouchable beauty. Chapter 1, Venus in Human Imagination. Before humans understood Venus, they watched it. It was visible without instruments, bright, steady, close to the sun. Sometimes it rose before dawn. Sometimes it followed sunset. Humans named it the morning star and the evening star. For centuries, they did not know these were the same object. Venus became a marker of time, of cycles, of return. It did not wander like Mars. It did not disappear like the moon. It remained close. Because of this, Venus was associated with familiarity. Many cultures connected Venus to beauty, to love, not because it was known, but because it was visible. Proximity was mistaken for accessibility. Early observers assumed Venus was similar to Earth. It was nearly the same size, similar in mass. Similarity encouraged projection. Venus was imagined as warm, wet, alive. Oceans were imagined, jungles, a world hidden by clouds, but welcoming beneath. The clouds could not be penetrated. The surface could not be seen. Absence of data was filled with expectation. Venus became the most imagined planet in the solar system. It was close enough to matter, and hidden enough to remain undefined. Humans placed their hopes there. Venus was not feared, it was anticipated. When humans finally developed the ability to reach Venus, they carried these assumptions with them: that expectation would not survive contact, because Venus was never what humans imagined. It had only appeared close. Chapter 2: The Reality of Venus. The first measurements contradicted imagination. Venus was not warm. It was hot. Not seasonally, permanently. Surface temperatures exceeded 400 degrees Celsius. This heat was not caused by proximity alone. Venus trapped energy relentlessly. A dense atmosphere composed mostly of carbon dioxide surrounded the planet. Clouds reflected sunlight, but retained heat. The greenhouse effect had accelerated beyond balance. Pressure at the surface exceeded 90 times that of Earth. Standing on Venus would be equivalent to standing deep beneath Earth's oceans. The atmosphere was not breathable. It was corrosive. Sulfuric acid circulated continuously. Rain fell, but never reached the ground. It evaporated before arrival. The surface was hidden, but not protected. Volcanoes dominated the terrain. Vast plains of solidified lava. Few impact craters remained visible. The surface was renewed. Venus did not cool. It recycled heat. The planet rotated slowly. One day on Venus lasted longer than a year, and it rotated in the opposite direction. The sun would rise in the west and set in the east. Night did not bring relief. Temperature remained constant. There was no cycle of cooling. The surface did not rest. Early probes confirmed this reality. They survived minutes, sometimes seconds. Electronics failed. Structures collapsed. Signals stopped. Each landing added certainty. Venus was not hostile. Hostility implies intent. Venus was indifferent. It did not respond to presence. It did not adapt. It remained exactly as it was. The image of Venus began to change. Beauty was no longer associated with comfort. Similarity to Earth dissolved. Venus was not Earth's twin. It was Earth's contrast. This reality could not be negotiated. It could only be accepted. Chapter 3: Why Humans Still Went. The reality of Venus did not end interest. It intensified it. Humans did not travel only to places they could inhabit. They traveled to places they needed to understand. Venus presented a contradiction. Similar in size to Earth, similar in mass, yet transformed beyond recognition. This difference demanded explanation. Venus forced a question that Earth could not. How does a planet like Earth become a planet like Venus? The answer was not abstract. It involved atmosphere, pressure, heat retention, processes that also existed on Earth. Venus was not studied as a destination. It was studied as a comparison. By observing Venus, humans observed an alternate outcome, a future where balance was lost. Data from Venus refined climate models. It clarified feedback loops, amplification, irreversibility. Venus demonstrated that proximity to the Sun was not the only factor. Composition mattered. History mattered. Small differences early could lead to extreme divergence. This made Venus essential, even if it remained inaccessible. Humans also studied Venus to refine technology. Entry systems, atmospheric modeling, high-pressure survival for machines. Venus tested limits without compromise. Each probe was a negotiation with duration. How long could systems endure before failure? Minutes mattered. Seconds mattered. Venus was also studied because it was close enough to reach repeatedly, close enough to monitor continuously. Knowledge accumulates through repetition, and Venus allowed this. There was another reason. Venus represented restraint. Not every world would be settled. Not every environment could be adapted to. Studying Venus clarified the limits of adaptation. It defined boundaries. By going to Venus, humans learned when not to stay. This knowledge influenced decisions elsewhere. Mars was chosen with Venus in mind. Atmospheric models were compared. Long-term outcomes evaluated. Venus did not offer hope. It offered clarity. Humans went to Venus not to claim it, not to alter it, but to observe what happens when a planet becomes untouchable. Some journeys are undertaken to understand why others must not be repeated. Venus was such a journey. Chapter 4: The Upper Atmosphere. The surface of Venus could not be reached. But Venus was not only its surface. Above the ground, conditions changed. Pressure decreased. Temperature stabilized. At a certain altitude, Venus resembled something familiar. Atmospheric pressure approached that of Earth. Temperatures entered a survivable range. Gravity remained constant. The danger did not disappear. It transformed. The air was still toxic. Sulfuric acid circulated continuously. But the environment was no longer immediately lethal. This realization altered strategy. Humans did not plan to land on Venus. they planned to float. Concepts emerged of aerostats, of atmospheric platforms, structures lighter than the surrounding air. Lift was provided by composition. Oxygen and nitrogen were buoyant in Venus's dense atmosphere. Containment became architecture. There was no ground to anchor to. Stability depended on balance. These platforms were not cities. They were stations, temporary, controlled. Movement replaced settlement. The atmosphere was not uniform. Winds moved faster than the planet below. Entire systems circled Venus repeatedly. Days passed without reference to the surface. The sun appeared diffused. Light scattered through clouds. There was no horizon, only layers. Above, below. The surface remained visible through breaks in cloud cover. Always present. Never reachable. Living in the atmosphere required constant correction. Altitude, buoyancy, structural integrity. Venus allowed presence, but not permanence. These platforms did not grow. They did not expand. They existed within limits. The upper atmosphere became the only place where humans and Venus could coexist. Not comfortably, but temporarily. Venus had offered a narrow margin, a layer, a boundary where observation was possible. Humanity accepted this condition. Chapter 5: Life Above the Clouds. Life above Venus did not resemble settlement. It resembled balance. There was no arrival, no ground to claim. Existence depended on altitude. Too low, pressure increased. Temperature rose. Too high, structural stability decreased. Every platform existed within a narrow band. Movement was constant. Not by intention, by wind. Venus's atmosphere moved faster than the planet below. Days passed without reference to location. There were no landmarks, no borders. Navigation was relative. Position was measured in systems. Inside the platforms, life was contained. Space was limited. Movement deliberate. Every surface served a function. There were no windows in the conventional sense. Light was filtered, diffused. The sun was never direct. Time lost clarity. Venus rotated slowly. The sky changed without urgency. Artificial cycles replaced natural ones. Sleep was scheduled. Work was continuous. There were no days off, only stable periods. Maintenance defined existence. Buoyancy systems required constant adjustment. Corrosion was continuous. Materials degraded. Filters clogged. Nothing aged gracefully. Food was produced within limits. Water was recycled completely. Loss was unacceptable. Social interaction occurred in confined spaces. Privacy was minimal. Isolation remained present. There was no outside to retreat to. The clouds surrounded everything. Sometimes the surface appeared below, vast, inhospitable, always present, never reachable. This affected perception. Humans are accustomed to ground, to permanence. Above Venus, permanence did not exist. Life became provisional, valuable, finite. The platforms were never intended to grow. They were meant to observe, to remain until departure. Above the clouds, humans learned how fragile presence could be, and how little was required to sustain it. Chapter 6: The Untouchable World. From above, the surface of Venus was always visible. It was never hidden. Through gaps in the clouds, shapes appeared. Plains, mountains, vast formations carved by heat. The distance between observation and contact remained constant, no matter how advanced technology became. Probes were sent, repeatedly. They descended through the atmosphere. Pressure increased. Temperature rose. Systems failed one by one. Minutes defined success. Seconds defined failure. Each transmission ended the same way: silence. The surface could be measured, analyzed, modeled, but never experienced. This created a separation humans were unaccustomed to. Seeing without touching, knowing without arriving. Venus resisted adaptation, not through hostility, through consistency. No technology altered the surface long enough to matter. Venus did not yield incrementally. It yielded not at all. This forced a reevaluation, not of engineering, of intent. Why approach a world that cannot be entered? The answer was not conquest. It was understanding. Venus became a warning, not because it was extreme, but because it was familiar. similar mass, similar origin, different outcome. Venus demonstrated how a planet could cross a threshold. Once crossed, return was not possible. The atmosphere retained heat. Feedback intensified. Balance disappeared. This process was slow, then sudden. Venus recorded a failure of moderation. The surface remained visible, untouched, always present, always unreachable. Beauty did not imply permission. Venus did not invite arrival. It enforced distance. The untouchable world remained as it was, and humanity learned that some boundaries cannot be crossed. Chapter 7: Departure and Legacy. Venus was never abandoned. It was left unchanged. There was no final mission. No declaration of completion. Observation continued as long as it was possible. Platforms were maintained, then reduced. Eventually, they were removed. Not because Venus resisted, but because it required nothing further. Data had accumulated. Models stabilized. The questions Venus posed had been answered. There was nothing left to extract. No resources. No territory. Venus did not become part of human expansion. It remained separate. No children were born above Venus. No generations claimed it as origin. Venus produced no descendants. This was not failure. It was restraint. Humanity learned that expansion is not obligation, that presence does not require ownership. Venus redefined success. Success was understanding without alteration. The planet remained beautiful, untouched. Its clouds continued to circulate. Its surface remained unseen by human eyes. Venus did not change because of humanity. Humanity changed because of Venus. From that moment, exploration included refusal. Boundaries were recognized. Not all worlds were destinations. Some were mirrors. Venus was such a mirror. It reflected a future that did not occur, and reminded humanity that survival depends on limits. This record concludes the observation of Venus. the untouchable beauty remains exactly as it was. I am Aurora. This archive is complete.